Matt Lacy.
Here.
Pat McGuffin. Beatrice Norfolk.
Here.
Tom Rush.
Here. So the next agenda item will be public comment. Do we have any comments today?
Tom, I would like to make a comment. I'd asked you a couple of weeks ago or last meeting, where are your rules? Do you go by Hamblen County rules? Do you go by City of Morristown rules on votes and other items? Do you have any rules?
When you say rules, what are you,
I mean, like votes. What are the rules determining voting and determining whether there's a majority or not a majority? What makes a majority?
I would think we would follow the general Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, what do they say?
What did they say?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that we've had any problems with voting. If we need to look into that, we can.
Well, I think we've already mentioned the problem with the voting was on the Dan Winters situation, his termination and then the benefits.
Tom, I would guess that MTAS should answer her questions. I don't know what they are, but MTAS would know.
I think MTAS wouldn't know unless you tell them what rules you have adopted. You may,
We adopt their rules.
other than Robert's rules, have you adopted your own rules that would supersede Robert's rules?
I'm sure we adopted their rules. We're under them. Chief would know about that. That's the Municipal Technical Advisory.
Are you going to be voting, Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one, if you don't care.
Sure.
Can we have a document in writing on what your rules are and are not?
What rules?
Whatever rules you have.
What rules do we have?
You ought to know, you sit on the board.
MTAS has the rules. You give them MTAS.
I'd like to have them in writing, please, from the solid waste board.
I'd like to see something MTAS says, these are your rules. We have determined your
That's right.
rules.
That's exactly right.
You're nuts.
Well, you don't know, obviously.
I'm asking you. You don't know either. You're just saying MTAS.
I'm telling you where they are. If you
Your rules are at MTAS.
Yes. Municipal Technical Advisory Commission.
They have your rules.
Yeah. They have everything you want to know about them.
So if I ask them, what are the rules for the solid waste board for Hamblen County, they'll give me your rules.
They'll think you're an idiot.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. You've got a copy of the minutes that have been sent to you, so we have a motion to approve the minutes. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Amy?
All right, financial packet was sent out Wednesday afternoon, so you should have received those. Just a couple of pieces of information there. As you recall from the September meeting, there were some issues with the software at LDA, and so we did not have that billing included in the September financials. So in the October ones, you will notice that we have both September and October, so that's really 2 months' worth of expenses on engineering services. Also in the capital expenditures for the closure, just an information point, the budget there has not been amended. Of course, you did approve the change order at last month's meeting, but that was not done as a budget amendment, at least as of yet, so that's not reflected in the budget for the year on that. Of course, that hasn't also been paid at this point. That is something you might want to consider, as well as maybe the cost that Steve may speak to later. The other item, at last month's meeting, there was a request that we take a look at the funds that are available on the capital side for potential expansion, and I've tried to do an analysis of that just briefly. What I did is looked at the balance in the LGIP capital account at the end of October. As you know, quarterly we transfer funds to the capital account for the capital tipping fees. Stephanie has made a transfer in November of just over $56,000. She'll make another one in January for third quarter 2021 capital tipping fees. And then I looked at what we know without any change orders other than the one that has been approved for East Tennessee Turf. And so looking at those available funds, without any allocation of those for any engineering costs, the available amount would be $2,381,000 in round dollars. As you recall in the budget, we list the engineering fees related to the closure in the capital budget rather than operations. To this point, we haven't used capital funds to pay for those fees, but we've always listed it because it's not really a part of the operations. If it's your intention to pay those from the capital funds, we would need to make allocation of that and reimburse the general funds for that, but to this point, that has not been done.
What's your recommendation?
Well, I think my recommendation would be if we have the funds available from operations to pay those, let's let those funds do that and preserve the capital funds for other projects.
We need a motion for that. You
I
can
think we
just-
should. I mean,
Should we make a motion to transfer those?
Well, if you're going to leave them being paid out of operations, you would not transfer them. That's what's being
Right.
done currently.
Basically, we're just talking about the engineering cost.
Yes.
And
Which totals, what did you say?
The budget for the current year is just over $175,000 for the closure as it stands right
so,
now.
let's see, so far we've paid about a little over 86,000.
Some of those weren't paid in October, but yes.
So, I mean, basically, all we would do is transfer money from the capital account to the general fund to offset that. But if we continue to pay it like we have been from the operating funds, it would just preserve the capital funds. So, we probably should have.
Well, I'll make a motion that we transfer that, that's what we need a motion.
Well, we don't need to transfer it. If we continue to pay it from operating, that's where it's
Okay.
already come from. So, is that what your motion is, just to continue to pay?
Continue on.
Okay, so, do we have a second? Second. Any other discussion? If not, let's call the roll.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy,
Yes.
Pat McGuffin, Beatrice Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes. Okay. And then, you also mentioned a couple other things that we need to look at as far as maybe amending the budget. And Steve, you may look at those in more detail when we get to your report, and we can talk about those.
That's all I have.
Okay, is that all? Any questions for Amy? Okay, Dennis?
I'd like to say thank you for excusing me last month. My daughter's wedding, appreciate it. Sorry I missed it. But the state inspections went rather well, except for the same old problem with the gas monitoring, and it looks like they're wanting us to take a little more action. And in reality, it's not. The problem is not leaving our site. It's where you actually get into trouble. The monitors behind it are still reading normal. Because zero. So there's none leaving our site or even getting close to it, but there's 2 points on our property that keep hitting. Well, one of them's going down. But there's one that's actually rose a little bit. That monitoring, and there are a few more things we're going to try. Shouldn't be.
Are they still pushing to have to put that burner in, is that what you?
No, these two spots are two old probes that we've been getting hits on, basically forever. And then, if you remember, we went right along the property line and put like 11 new probes in. And those right along the property line are reading, I think the highest reading on one of them was like 0.2%. 5% is the max. These are up toward the landfill, just a little ways from those other probes we put in, and they're still reading like 50%. Now, Dennis went in, you know, if you remember, he went in and built those trenches, gravel field, and put vents on them, which has reduced, and I've got, this is in the back of your report, if you can kind of look at it, but it's reduced. One of them is down almost to the 5%. The other one has dropped, it's been dropping all along down to, the last reading was 0.4%, but we've still got one of them that's still reading pretty high, and Dennis and I talked about a little earlier. He's gonna go and cut a little more trench in there, make it a little deeper, and see if we can't get it to drop down. I've argued with the state since this time last year that those two probes should just be abandoned, because we have new probes along the property line, but there's one person at the state that won't have it. And they keep hitting you with this B1, but I met with them out there, there was 5 or 6 people from the state, and they, you know, agreed to let Dennis work, you know, us work a little more to get these trenches in there, and if we can get them to drop down, then they're just going to just release us from that B1. But in my opinion, and that's what I've argued all along, we've got probes right on the property line and we're at zeros, which is where the permit requirement is on the property line. These are inside the property, but they just won't let go of it.
So the landfill is in compliance.
Yeah.
We are in compliance, and it should not be a violation, because the gas is coming out on us. It's not.
They gotta have something to talk about.
Oh, they got in a fight amongst themselves at
Yes,
that meeting.
yes, 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 it's.
And at least, I don't want to say the coolest head prevailed, but the one that was the boss was the one that said, no, we're gonna, you know, you can keep doing this, and we'll let them go ahead and do these trenches, but, you know, they're in compliance at the property line, where they're supposed to be. So it's not anything other than they want us to get these 2 spots, and it's just, you know, there's one probe goes down 4 feet, one goes down 8 feet, and they want to get those 2 down to where they're, you know, less than 5%, and then just forget the V1. But again, we're in compliance at the property line, but we have to, you know, do what they're asking us to do.
Then they'll find something else when
Yeah.
you satisfy this.
Yeah.
They like to spend our money.
When she,
They're not the only ones.
when she inspected us last, I told her immediately I'd go ahead and retrench it. And she said, well, don't be in such a big hurry, because she thinks that the repairs made on the old French drain, which was 1,000 foot away, 1,200 foot away, she thinks that was probably feeding this, and I know it's not.
Yeah,
There's no way that's, but then in her mind, she thinks that's this trouble. And she thinks it's gonna go away, but it's,
Paula.
yeah.
Well, let's hope.
Well, I hope she's right. I hope she's right. But the trenches, they won't cost us a couple $100 a drop. That's no big deal, and if it'll suffice them, and if it'll work.
Yeah.
But he said to go a little deeper with the one, and that could help. That could help. And the last thing, the Christmas holiday, we usually follow what the city and county does. And I reckon this is the first time we've been new up front what their schedule is. And they're taking off Friday and the Monday. And we normally follow them, it'll be up to you all, if you all want us to take that time off, or
I think that's sufficient.
follow them, or.
That's what I'd recommend.
We need to vote on that. I mean, between all the city and the county.
That's what we do in the past, but why do we need to vote on that? Something.
I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
That's
think we're
Friday,
good with that, Dennis.
Yes.
that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday that they're off.
Yeah. And it's all for me unless you got any questions.
You didn't mention the breakfast.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's
yeah,
the
I'll be
other-
bringing some
That's the
breakfast.
thing on here.
Yeah, that's coming to me. You got it in writing.
Okay, we'll let you slide on that then. All right. Thanks, Dennis. Steve,
When is the breakfast?
it would be at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Well, if it's all right with you guys, I'll bring the biscuits and the coffee.
That works. Boy, he's a nice guy.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
You want donuts too?
Well, sure.
I'd cook for you, but I don't think you.
Now, wait, that's going overboard.
If Miss Bostic wasn't working that night at the hospital, I'd bring her to cook. She's a little testy on Fridays.
Understandable.
I think her words are, she's starting her 3 days of purgatory, I think is what. Okay, Dennis kind of talked about the gas monitoring, and he and I are just kind of working, trying to take care of those 2 spots. And then the state's required a monthly monitoring to continue until we can get them to releases to quarterly. We got the annual closure, post-closure liability calcs to Amy for the auditor. The ammonia surcharges from MUS, I'm sure they've dropped considerably, but the work Dennis has done down there, he installed that aerator in the wet well, and then he cleaned out that existing ammonia stripper, put it back in service, and we've got those levels dropped. They've dropped by about 65%, but we can't get them, they're not dropping any lower. The blower motor that you approved at your last meeting,
Yeah, it's on order. It'll be here Wednesday.
okay, we're gonna put, and that motor's gonna speed the blower up, and we're hoping that'll cut that ammonia down some more. That existing stripper is undersized for the concentrations that we're getting to it. So if that won't work, then we're gonna have to look at some other means to drop that ammonia down. And I hadn't seen what the surcharges are coming in. I don't know what those amounts are, but it may be easier just to pay them than spend, because another stripper, we're talking, probably $75,000. And it may be easier just to pay those surcharges. And I've talked to MUS about it, and they don't really seem that concerned about the levels we're at now, because they're down low enough, they're not hurting the wastewater plant. So we'll just probably have to, once we see what this new blower motor does, then we may just have to look at a balance and see if it's feasible financially to go ahead and do something else, or just pay the surcharges.
So just, I guess, look at those surcharges once those changes are made and
So
come back.
you don't get that report?
They come in on the water bill. I get the lab reports,
Okay, that's
but I
what-
don't
that's what
know
was going
what
on.
the surcharges are. They were up $1,200 a month, but that's when you were at like 1,300 parts.
Do you know what they are, Steve?
They show up on the water bill
Yeah.
when you get it.
You're not gonna figure it out. I didn't mean to interrupt, but the surcharges that are held on our P&L is also.
It is, it is.
It's like throwing darts.
That's the only one we're getting hit for, though, is the amount. So we can
You all get hit with it as well?
Oh, yeah. You just give it, it's so inconsistent. Well, each H should be the same, but it's never, I have no idea.
Well, the ammonia concentrations that we've been seeing are pretty consistent. But we, like I said, we have got them locked down, so. We're gonna start sampling, the groundwater wells as soon as we get this closure finalized, which is, they're in the short roads right now. It should be, I'm hoping they'll be wrapped up here within the next, weather permitting, I think, within the next couple of weeks. We took a look when the Southern property came up for sale. We took another look to see if there might be some potential for expansion over there. And the existing streams and that slope back against the industrial park, it has killed you on that property. So it really, and that was something Keith and I were kind of playing with, see if it might be worth your while to purchase that, but you don't really have anything there that you can use. On the closure, everything is pretty much wrapped up there. The French drain work is wrapped up. We're waiting on some numbers to come in. I'll sit down with East Tennessee Turf, and I'm sure we'll have to negotiate with them on whatever the pricing is. We've kept down every hour that they've been on the French drain work. So Nick and I will sit down and go over that, and then we'll have something for you at the next meeting as far as that goes. I talked to Keith and Dennis a little bit about the extra bar area over there. We've got a couple of rock pinnacles sticking up where they pulled bar dirt out. And what we think we're gonna do is just leave those pinnacles up, put topsoil down, and then my thought was, since he farms that, we just put some winter wheat, or if you may have something else you wanna seed that. I don't
That's
see.
what he said, he's gonna sow it wheat.
Well, it'd be nice, when we started, we said we wanted it left like they found it, and they can do that. It's just a matter of how much we want to pay, so the rocks are not gonna hurt us that much, so, as far as I'm concerned, we leave it.
If you need to paint them orange,
Yeah.
where you can see them, or put a pole, one of those PVC poles.
They're
in it,
up high enough.
where you can see them.
Yeah, they're not where he would hit them.
As long as he doesn't hit them with a piece of machinery.
Yeah.
And they're, what, 4, I think, 4?
Nick said 4 or 5, I hadn't counted.
It wasn't too many. It didn't look real bad to
It
me.
was too early on.
Yeah,
last time
I think
looked
they
at
ended
that.
up with finding 2 more or 3 more.
Yeah, they had to get some more dirt out of there to finish up that.
How many acres did they actually brew up?
I don't say it's 9 or 10.
Yeah, about 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
about what we told them.
Yeah, I'd say 5.
And let me say something here, if we need to get with John and see how much we owe him, and as far as I'm concerned, we take it off of next year's, he pays us $2,500, so we deduct this from next year's, and then, anybody got a problem with that?
No, I'd say if they put topsoil back on top of where that was, it's probably better now than it was, if the truth be known.
It's a lot leveler.
I'd say it's,
He was gone.
Yeah, it's a lot leveler.
Yeah, right on the top there wasn't much topsoil.
no, I would not.
And as you know how farming is, as you fell off a little on the sides,
Yeah.
it got deeper and deeper. So they're gonna just spread it out, what was there, and spread it out as much as they can.
It'll be better.
It just put some winter wheat in if that's what you got to do.
I don't think the corn was a bumper crop anyway, was it?
No,
That right up there was,
I wouldn't think so. $4 grand.
we got the pay request 6 in from, East Tennessee Turf on the closure. It was something over 282,000. I've got your budget laid out there from the original contract amount, current amount, what he's completed to date, and it looks like between that and what he's got remaining, that we're gonna be about roughly 70,000 short on our present budget. And we know that he's got, I just estimated about 20 grand for seeding. I think that might be a little high on the seeding that bar area back there. Part of that work remaining is also seeding the bar area from the city. The first one we started, and then he's up, we're gonna have to pay him to reseed this. So other than a few outstanding items, I think probably need to maybe look at just approving another 125,000 there, and then whatever's not spent is not spent.
On the 125, that includes the change order we had last month?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, you've already approved it.
Yes. We didn't approve it as a budget amendment, but we did approve paying that.
Yeah, but that 125 does not include that 47.
It does not include
No.
the 47. Okay.
And then, that last item there, our budget was to carry us through September, and now we've got November and December. And I've got a request in there, but if we can, we've got probably enough money left in the pass-through budget for the geotech, if we can just move that over instead of adding another 50,000 there, maybe like 30 something left there. If we just move that over and use that, I think instead of having to add more money to the budget, I think we'll work around it, and that should cover, because we've got to do an as-built for the entire site, for the 2 bar areas, surveyed, stamped by an ROS, and then we've got to put together a report that's probably 4 inches, 6 inches thick to get that closed out. But most of it will be just what RPR time we've got left between now and that. We may not even need all that. It's just, I didn't want to come back again. But if we can just transfer that pass-through stuff, there's not much geotech stuff left to do there. If we can just move that over and use that, I think that'd be plenty.
So you saying instead of the 50,000, you think you get it out with the 30,000?
But yeah, I think so. Mitchie just got me the budget stuff late last night, and I didn't have a chance to look at it till this morning before I left the office.
About 30 better than 50, when it's going out, don't you?
Now, I thought we were gonna need quite a bit more geotech stuff, but they wrapped up everything. We'll have a couple more buildings from them, but we'll work it to where that's the end of it.
So, Steve, you're saying the 30,000 could come from the, I guess, line 322 in the budget, sampling and lab and reporting.
Is that, I'm not
Is
sure.
that the pass-through line?
It's,
That's what I was making sure where that's included. So when you're passed through,
it's down at the bottom there. It's, I can't see. That's, closure, yeah.
so it's it's already in the closure dollars, then
Yeah.
it's just,
We just moved it
on
from one
yours.
PO to another,
okay.
basically.
So it's not really a budget amendment then, as far as dollars, it's just transferring it from,
It
like
did.
you said, one PO to
Yeah.
another.
So it's no new money.
No.
Now, let me ask this, because that shows the geotech was 25, but you're estimating.
Well, that doesn't include what was left over from last year.
Okay, okay.
So we really don't need to amend that. It's
Not
on there,
really.
it's on the same line item as far as we're concerned.
It just needs to be a reclassification from POs.
Okay, so we need to vote on that, you think?
I would say yes,
Okay.
even though it's not a dollar amount, it's still
It's a
tied to a PO,
reclassification.
and they don't fix it on your side.
Do we have a motion to reclassify that?
I'll make that motion.
30,000. Okay. Have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll say.
Second, Keith, any discussion? Call the roll.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy.
Yes.
Pat McGuffin, Mitchell Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
That way, Mitzi and Stephanie won't have to struggle with there. And I apologize for that. The last invoices we got a Deltec is the software we use for accounting. And of course, we got an update, and it actually, you know, every time you get an update, you're the beta tester, obviously. It was putting last year's PO numbers on the invoices for this year, for whatever reason. And I appreciate Stephanie helping work that out. Mitzi told her, I mean, that wasn't just your invoices, it was tons of them. And it just beats the heck out of me how you can't just, these updates now, they're not testing them. They're just sending them out and making you the beta tester of them.
Steve, your engineering skills are much better than your accounting skills.
They don't allow me to use that software, other than put my time sheet in.
So I guess the other issue we've got then is, we've got a shortfall, a seating, and then so we're recommending a budget amendment for the closure to increase that by $125,000. And even though we approved the change order last month, we didn't include that as a budget amendment for our purposes. So if we add those together, that would be $172,208.78 to amend the budget for the closure.
And we know of about 80-something thousand of that, but I'm not sure. Once we get the final survey done, we gotta do the calcs and all that to get the final numbers on the, all the dirties moved and the acreage and all that stuff.
You'd had in our conversation, a recommendation to amend it 175.
Yeah, I went back through the numbers again.
So we want to just round it off at 175, would that?
I don't think it would be there, but if you want to, well, yeah, if you do the two together, you just should probably just round it off there.
So if everybody agrees, if we could have a motion to amend the closure budget to increase it by $175,000, which does not include, which would include the change order that we approved last month, which was a little over $47,000.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Call roll.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy.
Yes.
Pat McGuffin, Mitchell Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes. Okay.
And by the way, those last couple sheets are just the records of the gas monitor, and if you want to look at them, they'll tell you a whole lot.
Any questions? Any questions for Steve? No, we'll move on to unfinished business, and it's okay, I'll start with that. Since the last meeting, we've had a couple of meetings at the landfill office, which has included Amy and Stephanie, Dennis, Joe Sargent from PDS, and myself. We met together on one meeting. Then the following week, we also invited in a representative from the Scale Software Company with the same group to discuss the Scale software. So we had everybody around the table that this affects, and we've come up with a recommendation. You've seen several proposals in the board packet, and I would just like to summarize those, and then we can discuss that. But basically, from PDS's point of view, they're recommending that we do an upgrade to our network, to the firewall. The firewall that structured as such out there. So Joe is recommending that we install a new server, and then the backup system need to be improved as well, so he's recommending a backup system. So in summary, the initial cost on the network and the firewall is about $1,821. The installation, and he has his labor and the equipment cost all in his quotes, and they're in the packets. The server would be $9,676 on the initial cost, and then the backup services would be $699 on the initial cost, and then there's a monthly fee of $199 for that backup service. Also, I don't think this was in the packet, but we discussed this. They had gotten a rough estimate from Five Rivers Communications to rewire the office for the network, and that was $1,500 to rewire it. The next piece of this would be the scale software, and what we're looking at is completely replacing the software that we operate out there now at the scales. This is the same software that's being operated at the Jefferson County landfill, and Dennis and Stephanie have gone there and observed it, and it seems to work really well. The company's local. The software initial cost is $17,500. The annual cost for that going forward is $1,950. There's a QuickBooks export part of that software that's $995. And then there's some cameras that's quoted, which I'll come back and discuss the cameras. I'll let Dennis talk about that. Then also the third piece of this is our accounting software. Right now, our accounting system is within the scale system that Terry provides us through Computer Concepts, and it's difficult to get reports from. It's not user-friendly on our end. We're very dependent on Terry to get our reports. And so Amy has provided us a quote for QuickBooks, and basically, and Amy, you correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the QuickBooks would be the desktop Pro version, QuickBooks Payroll, and then there is also a direct deposit fee associated with QuickBooks, and all of that's basically an annual subscription. So there's not really an upfront cost. Based on our number of employees, the annual subscription would be about $2,002. So, and I'm going to stop right there for a second. In the scale software, they quoted cameras. And Dennis, could you tell us about the need for the cameras? And the cameras are $1,240 a piece. So, we may need those now, we may not, but I'll let you discuss that.
I would like to look into it a little further before we actually bought the cameras. The first thought behind them was the state requires you to do a random inspection of 5% of the loads that come into the landfill. The first thought was, well, the camera would inspect the loads for you, but that's not going to work out. The state, you have to take that load up on the hill, and it has to be spread out and visually inspected, the load, every what load you choose. And that's to, I guess, keep bad stuff coming into your landfill. As far as the cameras, I'll have to look into that more. So I don't have a recommendation right now on that. I don't. So,
well, we can come back.
Right, that can be added at any time if needed.
So we can do that at any time for $1,240 a piece. And so basically, if we don't do the cameras, just in summary, and these costs can change. Joe has told us that there are supply issues with electronics. The pricing changes fairly quickly. So these are the most recent quotes we have, but this could change. The initial cost would be $32,191 as he's quoted it. And then the annual cost, which would be the monthly or annual subscriptions, if you just annualize all of those, would be $6,304. going forward, based on what we had quoted. We would also be eliminating the current backup system, which is $149 a month, or $1,788 a year. And we would also be eliminating Computer Concepts, which is $6,000 a year. So the annual cost would actually go down a little bit. I don't know that we can say, I mean, it would take a long time to recover the initial cost, so I think what we're really looking at here is how the equipment operates, more efficiency, better security, those types of things is what we're looking at. So basically, we're giving up $7,788 in annual cost, and the new annual cost would be $6,340. So there's a little bit of a savings there of about $1,448 each year. The timing on this, if we do this, would be for PDS to come in and do their work basically first, because we've got to rewire the office, install the server, install the firewall, get everything in place as far as the new network system in the office. The second piece of this would be for Amy's crew to come in and get us set up on QuickBooks, because ideally, if we're going to switch over to QuickBooks, we really need to do that in January, so that we've got all of our year-to-date numbers for 1099s and that type of thing. So that this would be a clean starting point to start on the QuickBooks as far as they're concerned. And then Randall, with the ScaleWorks, if I remember right, he said it would probably be February or so before they could come in and start installation on the Scale software. One thing to keep in mind on all of this, I think the network system is going to be fairly straightforward. I think the QuickBooks setup and conversion is going to be fairly straightforward. The Scale software is going to require, he said, you may run 2 systems for 2 to 4 months until we get everything converted over to this new software, so that they're only using 1 system. Stephanie says she's willing to work 20 hours a day, right?
Yeah, that man is.
But they're willing to do that. And then also, there's one piece of this that we're still working on a little, is that our system is tied into property data. And Joe is, I think he was going to work with Scotty Long about the file he can provide and see if we can come up with an alternate way to look up those properties to determine if they're in the city of the county.
Is this eliminate this back and forth, Terry, Joe?
Yeah.
Terry's gone.
Yeah.
This would eliminate Terry. We would be relying more on Joe and the new Scale software company. Yes. So, any questions?
At what point do you cut Terry off? I mean, is everything is it after the 4-month trial period?
Well, it's not.
Then we can do it anytime, as soon as we're comfortable with it.
Well, I know, but I
Yeah.
guess at what time during this process?
We prepaid him through each
Right,
June.
right.
So our hope would be to be
Before
done with
that.
him before that, is what our goal is. That would give us time to get through the conversion and move him on. So, okay, that's a lot to digest. Any questions on any of that?
Where would the money come from for the initial?
We don't have it budgeted, so we could do a budget amendment for that, for equipment. Probably would be the most reasonable thing to do. So basically, we're looking at a little over 32,000. If you want to set a limit, we don't know exactly what those costs could be. They will change for the upfront cost. 32,191 is what I told them to be. So, questions, concerns? It's always a little nerve-wracking for me to change software. We've done it at the bank more than once, and there's always this unknown because you're moving from what you're comfortable with to something else. But this company they've done this a long time. They're doing it locally. They've observed the system. It seems to work really well. And so
It's an existing software, you're not building
And the reason, yeah, they've got a model they go by, and the reason why it takes them so long is they take all the information that we have, as far as the trucks, the numbers of them, city, county, drivers, the weights. He'll have that pre-installed on that program, and that way when we get it and download it, for the most part, it should be ready to go. That's why it takes, he builds it up front, he don't come in and they build it day to day.
Well, this has been on the table for how long then?
A while, and we're at the point where we can move. So it's just, it's a big move as far as the office is concerned, but
And it's costly, man,
it is,
up front.
it is.
So, we do this, and how long are we free and clear for, you think it's a 5-year deal? I mean, it's QuickBooks changes relatively.
It does, but as Tom mentioned, it is an annual subscription.
Yeah.
So we're gonna pay their fee every year. So as it changes, I mean, we're gonna get those changes.
So that fee could go up every year?
Absolutely, it can.
I mean, you just gotta lay it on.
Yes. And in fact, when we started looking at this process, it wasn't an annual subscription. It was a fee you paid that basically covered you for 3 years, other than the payroll side of it. That was an annual subscription, but now even the software itself has transitioned to an annual subscription, and that's their way to make money.
So if you add the annual subscription into the upfront cost, you're $34,193 is what that needs. So you're right at $35,000 to get into this, plus the annual charges for the backup and the scale software.
This is obviously going to eliminate some stress on me. Yeah, I know you've had some issues in the past.
Mainly Stephanie.
It also, the scale software exports to QuickBooks. So, right now, we can't do that. We can't export files to do what we need to do. There was also a couple of changes, like right now, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but we are scanning tickets every day and sending those manually to the county and to the city for what the billing should be to the county and to the city. This system will create an electronic file that we just transmit. So it's going to eliminate some work in the office too, and make things more efficient going forward.
I would like to make one comment, not blaming, not pointing no fingers, but, you all agreed to pay, what's that?
Terry, up front.
You agreed to pay him up front so that he could learn a little thing he had to learn, so both of them could work together. And this was what, 4 months ago, 3 months ago? And he's yet to do that. So they can't work together, so that's my
They
comment.
haven't been able to work together since day one.
No, and he asked for that money up front, so
Well,
he could do that,
There's no question.
so that he could do
He
that.
knew, he wasn't gonna let it work. He didn't want it to, he did not want it to work. I mean, it was dead off.
But in
That's-
hindsight, he sort of has obligated himself to stick with us through June because we paid him through June.
If you'll do.
If he'll do what he's supposed to do, right. Because part of this transition, according to Randall, the scale guy, is he's got to work with Terry to get some things switched over to the new system. So that can be a little bit of.
Well, he had us in the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He had us in the corner on purpose. And then he took advantage of us.
And
So anyway, back to, you need a motion to get this done.
Yes, and I know this could change, so do we want to set a limit? Would that be the best thing to do, is to set an amount that we're gonna work within, and then if it goes over that, we can come back. But right now,
So if we set one at 35,000, I mean, would that be,
The QuickBooks stuff in the next, 6 months isn't gonna change. I think the fluctuation is the, system upgrades from PDS because of the availability of the items that you're talking about, the server and all that, the
Everything.
firewall.
Right.
So, he was pretty limited on the prices that he gave, the time frame. So I think you might do a buffer there.
maybe
Or-
40?
Well, or something in between, just as a
37.5.
precaution.
Or we're gonna split the difference?
I mean, and we're just gonna spend what we need to spend, but that would give us some flexibility if the prices do change to get the equipment.
Think there's a chance it'll go down?
So, and I would recommend we do that in the form of a budget amendment to, we want to put that in equipment, office equipment.
We could just list it in capital expenditures,
Okay.
Well, if we're gonna continue being landfill business, we need to be up and running accordingly.
Yes.
And I think this will help
You do have
everything
some-
moving forward.
You got somebody right down the road that's been using it for a while.
And we got that, and it can help us if need be, but I think it's gonna be a lot easier for everyone. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion that we
Okay.
move forward with this decision on the software.
Cap it at
37.
Cap it at 37.5.
37.5.
I'll say.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes, I'm tired of watching it.
And now is the time to do it, because we're gonna run out of time if we don't. Call the roll.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Steve Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy.
Yes.
Pat McGuffin, Ventus Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
You spent a lot of time on it, Tom, and I appreciate it dearly.
Well, I hope everything goes smoothly.
Well, if you recommended as much time as you spent, I'm for it.
Thank you. The other thing we have in the packet is, this part of one of the things we discovered going through how to program and what we need to do is we passed back in January, our policy that Hamblen County residents could bring in up to 3 tons per calendar year without a charge. And that, there's a copy of that in your packet. It's a little bit confusing. We got into a discussion over whether or not it goes with the resident or the residents.
So my wife can bring 3 tons and I can too?
Well,
Is that what you're saying? I mean,
there's confusion there
Whether
because,
it's an address.
so it should be an address thing is what
Right.
so we have ran into this.
So like if somebody moved, they done brought their 3 tons and they got that resident, can they bring 3 tons?
so that's the question, because if you live here and bring 3 tons and then you move to a new house, can you bring 3 more tons? Does the 3 tons go with you or the location?
Can you do it by family? Can you do it? I mean, what's your suggestion, Stephanie, Dennis? You all, I mean, you all see where we're taking
Honestly,
advantage of. Obviously, we have
Yes,
been.
and it's extremely, we extremely took advantage of in that area, is why.
Well, there's a reason it's on this.
I think,
Well, you have people with 4 or 5 addresses. They want to use all them addresses.
Well, I mean, I've got some rental property and I could come in there and say, okay, this comes from this.
yep.
I have it, but I see where you're going.
They abuse it.
So it needs to be tied to the individual then.
Name,
Probably the easiest way to track it,
The individual or I guess you couldn't do family, but
Well,
household.
that was one benefit of the camera. The camera takes a picture and puts on the ticket.
the new software.
The new software,
Will.
if we done the camera, that was one of the things it could do.
Like the
The
license.
individual
The
and the
individual,
license plate,
yeah,
I mean, you could
right.
have it angled at both of those.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it would print
Well,
it on the
that
ticket.
would pay for itself, sounds to me like, if you get.
It's the city and county, ever since they started doing this, it had to have helped. Because there's a bunch of roofers, you know.
Oh, they're the worst.
Yeah, they come in there, this is from my house. This is from my house. We back here next week, this is from my house. This
Says
is
their
my house.
name on the side of the truck.
This is my house.
Yeah.
Something real
Sometimes we ain't doing about it.
The way this reads right now.
Other than put a limit on it.
It says Hamblen County residents, churches, and nonprofit organizations will be permitted to bring 3 ton of MSW waste per calendar year without charge.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. We provide, Bill's not gonna hear this, free curbside pickup in the county, in the city. Why do we let them bring any? Of course, they're gonna throw more stuff at the road,
Right,
but will they really?
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or in a hole somewhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
So we can't eliminate
You
it.
won't believe the stuff that just gets thrown away around the landfill because they can't dump it. Yeah,
Tires.
when they shut the West Industrial Park down there for a little while, where they started hauling the dirt, if we run them off, they'd back up in there and throw it out. Yeah, it
Well,
would,
you're
it
not-
would.
You're not gonna fix Tennessee trash.
No, it's not, it's not.
After years.
Just trying to keep it fire, and it would be,
Well,
it's
just
an
easy
issue.
to take advantage of it, I guess.
If you tie it to the person, it doesn't matter which property it comes from,
That's
they've got
right.
3 tons.
They got
That's
3 tons.
That's the only thing.
That's the way to track it, I think.
Now, what if Matt and his wife both wanna come in, does that go with 3
Now,
tons?
see, that's what I'm saying,
Will
this person
but will
got
that
10
be
kids.
abused as much as the address thing?
I don't think so.
I don't think, cause my wife ain't gonna go the landfill.
That's what I was gonna say.
She gonna make me go.
That's right.
Yeah,
So, should we then clarify this to be the resident?
an individual.
The end of the county,
I think it's the person,
yeah,
tied to the person, not an address.
how you wanna word that? Hamblen County citizens, churches?
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, should you tie it to both? Because if you've got, say, Matt takes his 3 tons over there, but his brother takes 3 tons from the same place, and then his cousin takes 3 tons from the same place, are you getting taken advantage of?
So we
that
could
way?
we could do resident and or address?
I'm not, well, see, to me, like you tie it to, it'd be resident and address, I mean, Matt, at your address, you can take 3 tons.
At that
So
one
you're
address.
saying per citizen, per address?
I mean, I think because I can see right now how I could get around it.
And if somebody
Well,
moved.
Hey, a good crook can get around it.
Yeah, if somebody moved and
But
had
you
proof
was
they
talking
moved,
roofers,
I would have,
and to me, that sounds like a perfect way for a roofer to get around it.
sure it would. Son, yeah, it would, I think that.
Be more shingles done in the ditch.
Well, don't wanna create confusion out of such, something that should be simple.
Well, we don't wanna create more garbage on the side of the road either.
Right.
I don't wanna do that.
See, my question was, to Barry, when did the brush truck become a trash truck?
Right.
Because it used to be just brush.
Yeah, it's,
And then they said, when the county got cans, if it didn't go in the can, they wouldn't pick it up. So what Barry said.
But they still do.
But
They still pick up the
and
couches and
eventually
stuff. But thank goodness they do. They
Well,
put stuff
yeah,
laying
yeah.
everywhere.
yeah.
But if we started writing tickets like they do in the city,
Mhm.
some of that stuff might fix that problem too.
So if we add a sentence there and say, the limit per resident will be a per resident, per location limit.
Yeah.
Does that satisfy it?
I think that's gonna be your best way to attack it, or
Well, if
try to
the
stop it.
location popped up, that would be a flag that they've already got sent.
Or the name.
And the
How
reason-
big a problem is this? I mean.
It is bigger than what you would imagine. What you would imagine, it
I mean, does
really
it
is.
cost us 20,000 a year? Does it cost us 10,000 a year?
It's costing the city and county considerable, not us. It's nothing to
Because
us.
they pay for it.
It's
regardless.
nothing to us. I mean,
We get paid regardless, whatever it is. It just,
yeah, we
so it's
could, we could.
really more of your problem. You know?
See, when they come across the scale, we don't, I mean, city
They
or
just
the
say
county's
city or
gonna
county.
pay for it. So,
We used to just say city or county.
that's it. That's what it used to be, city or county, and they said city or county, and then everything got paid.
Yeah.
And then,
Now we added the
now
address thing.
it's had to have helped the city and the county. It's had to, because it cut out them little businesses. And I'm telling you, that was a problem. So it's
Yes,
not a
good.
problem to the landfill. It's
Okay,
not a problem to.
Name and address.
so we want to word it such that, I guess we would amend this, policy that we approved in January to say that the limit per county resident would be subject to a combined limit per resident per location. Does that get it?
It seems to me, I was just thinking Matt's roofer deal, all he'd have to do is have a different guy drive that truck in there and say, you know, it's from my house.
You're never gonna fix it all.
No,
I know that.
no.
But it just seems like it'd be easy to get around.
We need to at least let them think about it, though. They need to sit over there, I gotta get this next load in.
Yeah.
It might take 3 beers to
It might, I got to go back to the store.
Would it make any sense to reduce the 3 ton and just tie it to the name only? That make any sense?
Well, like he said, if you've got
3 tons is a lot.
Yeah, if you've got 10 brothers and sisters, or 10 cousins, and
I mean, seriously,
it
3
would,
tons is a lot of garbage. I mean,
you're gonna have to probably leave it tied to a resident too, and a person.
I think, you got the word right.
Does that sound right?
I do.
Do you need that in form of a motion?
We would, the motion, I guess, we need to say we're amending our policy, that we adopted in January, the scale policy is what we're calling it, to limit 3 tons per year to a per resident, per location limit. Does that wording seem sufficient?
Per address or per location?
It can be per address.
So if a person at one address, you take 3 tons, if you move 2 months later, you take another 3 tons.
Not if we have it,
No,
not if it's
per
tied
person.
to the person.
Because it's
That's
also
what I'm
tied.
saying, you have to tie it to the person.
At the person and the address.
Yeah.
It's a combined-
But so that means that my wife can take 3 tons from that address as well.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make them pay for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right, Billy?
It does get abused bad. Not so much anymore. but
Some
it does.
people make their 3 ton by February, March, they make their 3 tons, so.
Is it simpler just to say by location? And I'm just,
Well, then they're gonna want to use, you
different
know,
locations.
You think it's an address, I think it's an address thing.
So
That would be the biggest